Health and fitness again. So what we're doing is we're saying goodbye to willpower and hello to skill power. And I am going to tell you why, or try and explain why I'm saying this. This is a 3-part series, and I will introduce to you the tools of A.T.L.A.S throughout the 3 presentations. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Jo Swan, and I'm an expert in transformation. I've been in this business for over 30 years. I transform myself and I transform the people that I work with. I'm also a licensed strategic psychotherapist and clinical hypnotherapist. What does that mean? I think a few of you last year asked, what does it mean to be a strategic psychotherapist? It means that I upskill people. I teach people tools. So when people come to me with a problem, the problem is actually just the access point for me. We don't delve deeply into past and trauma because we can't change it. But what we can change is how people operate now. So that's why I'm so energetic and fond of skills and tools, because they're very powerful. If you want to find out more about me, I'll just give my website to you at the end. What I often say to people is, most people think that the human experience is hard, overwhelming, filled with suffering, and that we are ill-equipped. But the truth is, we have everything we need to navigate the complexity and ambiguity and live truly fulfilled lives. We are not missing anything. We simply overlook what we truly are. And I believe that it's part of the journey to discover our true nature and flourish. And in the words of William Wordsworth in 1978, we half perceive and we half create the world. And that is the theme of today. So we're going to be saying goodbye to willpower and hello to skill power. We're going to understand the body-mind complex to identify the mental constructs that are sabotaging your goals and habits and that cause suffering. I'll introduce the awareness anchor, which is the tool that I use for this, and it will shift your perspective. I'll give you practical steps to move from finite to infinite conscious decision-making. Now, I will say at this point, everyone is unique, but in my experience, the patterns are the same. So take what you want from this, make it yours, do it your way. I hope it helps. A.T.L.A.S. So what is A.T.L.A.S? A.T.L.A.S is a powerful framework for lasting change. They're mind tools that instantly shift your emotional inner state. And when practiced and used over time, they will give you a map and a compass so that you can navigate the ambiguity and complexity of the human experience. I use A.T.L.A.S in my clinical practice, and it has helped a lot of people. I specialize in dependency, addiction, bad habits, people that want to improve their lifestyle. And this has helped people that have had 20 years of drinking problems, binge eating, unconscious eating, unhealthy lifestyles transform. And so I believe in it very much. I use these tools every single day. And even last night, I had actually some devastating news that would have rendered me sobbing, a sleepless night, and lots of regret. I used this tool that I'm going to present to you today, and it helped me a lot. It helped me shift out of that sabotaging suffering. So that was unplanned, but it did let me put it to the test in real time. So A.T.L.A.S, what does A.T.L.A.S actually stand for? So it's a blend of ancient philosophy and modern day psychology. Yes, it's an acronym, A.T.L.A.S. So it does blend science, psychology, neurology with ancient philosophy. And there's 5 tools of A.T.L.A.S. And once you learn them, you'll learn how to use them and when to use them. And each tool is a couple of minutes. It doesn't take very long to shift that inner state. I've actually written a book. My first book is going to be published next month, which I'm very excited about. And it's based around A.T.L.A.S. And what we look at is, first of all, the awareness of self. And the tool for that is the awareness anchor. And below that, you can just see some questions that I asked to prompt people's thinking. The second tool is called the Curiosity Compass, and that deals with thoughts and feelings. Then we have the Disruptor tool, which is all about your locus of control. Then we have the Body Intelligence tool, which is about adventurous awakenings. And the final one is called the Pathless Path, and that is about abundance, how to manifest abundance. So the first question that I would like to ask you today to reflect upon is, where are you now? Because what I'm suggesting is that you have squeezed yourself into the narrow frame of a perceived individual. And to understand that, I'm just going to invite you to expand a little bit, just expand your perspective a little bit. We're going to look, first of all, at sense perception. Now, most people misidentify themselves as a finite, so limited, individual self, accepting the world around them without questioning it. This is an understandable error because of how the world appears to us. But it's the attachment to this perceived individual self and the thoughts and the feelings that are generated that cause suffering, mental constructs, and prisons. Let's look at this in a little bit more detail. So what do I mean about sense perception? This is each of us. This is you. The way you see the world, the way that reality appears, is first of all through sense. And here I'm talking about the biological senses of touch, taste, sight, sound, smell, which are all attached to a corresponding organ. We also have about 5 other senses: proprioception and balance, which could fall into the second lens. But basically, you have your 5 biological senses. That's the first lens. The second lens is raw perception. And what raw perception does is it creates a coherent picture of the world. And here lies the first illusion, because the stimuli that we're receiving from our sense perception is very limited. If you can imagine that it's even different from all other living organisms. I think the sensory modalities that we now know are present within all living organisms surpasses 50. So you can imagine if you had all 50 of these senses, it would be sensory overload. So this is why we're limited to the 5 senses, 10 senses, 5 main senses, 5 other senses that we really need. If you were a bee or a frog or a fish, then you would see reality completely differently, because you would have, there's electroreception, magnetic reception, lots of different things. So therefore, reality is extremely subjective. You can see in this next slide, this is the image on the left is a forest, how a human might see it. And the image on the right is the same scene, the same forest, seen in the forest as seen by like a bee or a frog. Likewise, there's an underwater view here. The image on the left is what a human might perceive, and the image on the right is what a fish might perceive. So suffice to say, even the raw data of reality, before it has been coloured with any experience at all, is super subjective. And then when the mind and body complex start to process and interpret this information, it starts to get shaped by our beliefs, our culture, our social expectations. And because we perceive the world through this limited perspective, very limited perspective, we start to believe that we are also limited. To further obscure this reality, we have our non-conscious and our subconscious survival instincts. We have predictive processing, and that is extremely distorted, especially in this modern age. Predictive processing uses past experience to predict the immediate future. So by this time, even two separate individuals can receive exactly the same information and perceive it completely differently. Let's look a bit further into the mind-body complex. So this is a locus of experience. We can think of it as a locus of experience. It's how we experience the world. And it's an interconnected system of the physical body, biological functions, thoughts, emotions, feelings, and perceptions. Within the mind-body complex, we have divisions of the mind: the conscious, the subconscious, and the non-conscious. Yeah. Now, we do have to look at the divisions of the mind. So the conscious mind, and what I will say about this is there's not actually different parts. We can't actually look at the conscious, the subconscious, and the non-conscious, but neurologically, this is how it's easy for our finite minds to understand it. So the conscious mind is very active in our waking state of thoughts, perceptions, and sensory experiences. It's linked to the prefrontal cortex, the PFC, for planning, decision-making, and impulse control. It has a processing speed of 40 to 50 bits per second. The subconscious mind stores all life experiences. Now, the reason I've made that bold is because it's all life experiences. That's massive. And it's responsible for 95% of our behavior. And let's highlight the second bullet point. It operates just below awareness. So it's not even in our awareness unless we consciously bring some parts of it. It is possible to bring some parts of it into our awareness, and that's what these tools do. But you have to practice it. So it also cannot differentiate between reality and imagination. So all your catastrophes are being stored as life experiences. Imagine that. It has a processing speed of 11 million bits per second. Compare that to the processing speed of the conscious mind. It's super powerful. And then we have the non-conscious mind. So non-conscious is survival focused. It operates 24/7 outside of awareness, and it manages the bodily functions and ingrained instincts. Now, guess where willpower lives? Conscious mind. So even if you had 100% of your willpower, you could only that would only be responsible for 5% of your behavior, even if you had 100% of whatever willpower was available to you. Willpower primarily lives in the prefrontal cortex, the PFC, and that will often go offline if you're not in homeostasis. So for long-term self-regulation, we have to train the subconscious mind to align with our goals, our desires. We cannot rely on willpower. I'm going to give you a metaphor just to tell you how, just to hopefully explain a little bit and highlight the immense influence of the subconscious mind over thoughts, behaviors. And bear in mind, it operates largely out of awareness. So if the conscious mind was like a tiny flashlight illuminating a small portion of the dark, the subconscious mind is the vast power grid that powers the entire city. So while the flashlight focuses on small little details, the power grid handles everything else. It's massive. That's why lasting change, in my experience, has to recruit the subconscious mind. Okay, moving on. So the body mind, not realizing that it perceives reality through the obscured, limited, subjective lens of sense perception, believes what it experiences to be reality. It sees a world of multiplicity and diversity, limited objects and limited selves. The separate self, therefore, or some people might call it an ego or finite being, is a construct based on our sense perception. We can't blame it because it just believes what it experiences. This separate self or ego or finite being is an image we create through our experiences and conditioning, and it forms a narrative about who we believe we are. Now, I must explain something about our biological wiring, because these very powerful instinctual mechanisms reside in the subconscious and the non-conscious. And remember that non-conscious is beyond awareness. This works very well with our ego, our separate self, to form what we call our cognitive style, which means way of thinking. These the biological wiring, you might remember, I think a few of you were present for last year's health and fitness workshops that I did, because I spoke about these. We're programmed to have a low tolerance for ambiguity. We don't like uncertainty. Uncertainty for our ancestors meant certain death. We have cognitive bias. We have a very powerful non-conscious bias, and we want to be right. We are prediction machines, and cognitive bias looks for and recognizes evidence and patterns that support the prediction. Negative priority. Bad news is way more powerful at getting our attention than good news. That's why all the headlines, all the news is always bad news. We're attracted to catastrophes, gossip, because, again, bad news, negative situations kept us safe, our ancestors safe. We have a low tolerance for discomfort. So from an evolutionary perspective, avoiding comfort was crucial for our survival. And because it's primordial, it's based in the non-conscious, it's powerful, and it doesn't recruit the PFC to analyze the data and prioritize long-term gain for short-term discomfort. So that's why food, alcohol, all these things are comfort from discomfort. Perpetual dissatisfaction is really actually good for the species because it's a catalyst for growth. So we are perpetually dissatisfied. This results in what we call in psychology cognitive distortions, which form a massive part of people's problems. Cognitive meaning the way we think, distortion, misrepresented. So misrepresentations of the way we think is because modern day is obviously very different from our ancestor hunter-gatherers, for which this survival mechanism was designed for. We all know this. Okay, so as a result of what I just presented to you, our separate self, the ego, we create mental prisons. And we can't be hard on the separate self or the ego. It's actually our friend. It keeps us safe. But it's just so misled. It's just so misunderstood. What it does is it makes these mental prisons and it puts us in there. And what we do is we adapt. We adapt to the prisons. We design coping mechanisms, methods, limiting beliefs. We catastrophize uncertainty. We make up stories, what ifs and if onlys. And this is where you might think that you are. The problem is, as I've said, they are based upon what we now know is an illusion. And this is not to say that what we are experiencing is not real. It is real, but it's based upon a false reality, a perception that is limited. So it's not true, but it's very convincing. So coming back to this statement, most people think that the human experience is hard, overwhelming, filled with suffering, and that we are ill-equipped. If all we had was what sense perception reveals to us through the mind-body complex, then I would agree. I would say for sure it's just too hard. But it's not all we have. We are actually infinite beings. And, I know it's said a lot and it's a bit cliche, infinite beings having a human experience. Yes, we are. I believe that. That's my belief. And I don't think it's magical thinking because it can be supported experientially. There is one experience that we can have that is not mediated through the finite mind, through the mind-body complex that we spoke about. And that experience is the awareness of being. And the skill that I'm going to talk you through, give you practical steps for, is called the awareness anchor, and it takes us directly there. So coming back to the question of where are you now, you have squeezed yourself into the narrow frame of a perceived individual. Hopefully you can see why I've said that, why I've said that. But now you know where you are. You know that there's more, there's much more to be looked at, to investigate. So what are we going to do about it? What I suggest is the answer to this question: where are you now? Now that you've revisited and expanded your awareness, you get to choose. And you get to choose every single moment of every single day. This is where you have all of your power. Most people spend their time in the past or in the future, and they wonder why they are powerless. You get to choose what you believe, You get to choose what thoughts you pay attention to and which ones you ignore. You get to choose how you respond to the outside world, and you get to choose and create your reality. And we start with the awareness anchor. Now, you may have noticed in this drawing that there is a white spot here, the unpainted part of the image. It's a portal, and it's a portal to the canvas, which you will notice is white. And this white canvas exists before any layers of sense perception have coloured it. So this is obviously a metaphor. It's a portal to the canvas in the picture. It's a window into the essence of the drawing, the untouched part, the uncoloured part, the part that is not mediated through the finite mind and through the mind-body complex. This is the portal to you, the true self, before the layers of conditioning, beliefs, thoughts, and feelings have been applied. This inner space is unlimited. It is infinite, and it's a connection to your true unconditioned nature. And we can connect to this portal to reframe, recreate, expand, express through the awareness anchor. Okay, so I would really love to take you through the awareness anchor, the steps of the awareness anchor. And it only takes a few minutes. So sit comfortably, close your eyes, and take a few deep breaths. Allow yourself to fully relax. Let go of any tensions, preoccupations. Just let your shoulders relax. And ask yourself, what is it that is aware of my experience right now? Notice any sounds, thoughts, smells, or feelings that might be present. Become aware of these experiences, but recognize they are not your core self. You continue to have the sense of being aware of these sounds, thoughts, smells, or feelings. But you observe them, that they are subjective and they are transient. You might even reflect that these are what we leave behind when we go to sleep at night. So they can't be essential to who we are. In the same way, when we go to bed at night, we undress, we take off of our clothes. It might reveal our naked body and we go to bed. These thoughts, feelings, experiences, we undress, we take them off, we leave them aside, and we sleep. Now set aside all content of experience, these thoughts and feelings, perceptions and sensations. Don't resist them, but just shift your awareness away from them and ask yourself, if I'm not my thoughts and my feelings and my perceptions or my sensations, what am I? Turn your attention away from the content towards the knower or the observer of the experience, towards that which is aware of the experience. The observer is your essential true self, the awareness of your true being. And you might even be able to notice that this observer feels the same as it did maybe an hour ago, maybe yesterday. The observer hasn't changed from 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. It's why sometimes when we look in the mirror as we age, we're surprised and we don't feel that age. It's because the observer, the true self, is not that age. It doesn't change from the moment we're born until the moment we die. There is no change. It's infinite. The observer is your essential true self and the awareness of your true being. And recognizing this might be fleeting at first, and that's perfectly normal. It's sometimes hard to hold on to that fleeting feeling of observer. But recognize this as your true self, the knowing of what you are before experience, before sense perception colors it. This is the direct path to peace and happiness. You can maybe even think about it like the blue sky within which there are turbulent clouds. And the turbulent clouds represent your thoughts and your experiences, but they appear and they disappear. And then when you're ready, you can just start to come back to the room. Maybe wiggle your toes, fingers. And what I would like to suggest is if you can repeat this short investigation daily just for 1 minute, you can maybe aim for 3 times a day for 1 minute and set it as a habit just before or after meals. Over time, you will be naturally drawn to this state without setting aside time. And this practice will be a resting place and a place for you to go when times are difficult. It's a place where you can find peace and comfort anytime you choose. Okay. I'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.